So this is the space for us. This is a resource space for us. We have some guests here that we're very excited about the event. We're very excited what the event things with us. We'll talk about some things right now. But overall, I'm very excited about what it's doing. So let's bow for a prayer. Then we'll go ahead and get started. Oh God, oh gracious and all wise God, we thank you for the gift of today. Thank you, oh Lord, that we can gather here in this place to be able to experience, God, all the things you're doing in our lives, God. And so we pray now for our time. We pray for our guests, those from our schools, God, those who are here, God, from our law firm, God, those who are here even from our church. So we pray that the resources shared today will be beneficial. In Jesus' name we do pray and we say, Amen. Amen. I'm going to ask for our CARES Ministry chairperson, Sister Deborah Waters Turner, to come forward. Y'all give her a round of applause as she comes forward now this time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moore. Good morning to everyone. I'm so happy to see everyone here today. And our topics today are way overdue for conversation. And I'm hoping and praying that something will be said this morning that you can resonate with, take back with you, and govern yourself accordingly as we do in the Good Baptist Church. So for our members online, members and friends that are online, if you have any questions as we go through this, hey, please put your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll make sure that we address those as they pop up as we have time. And so without further ado, we're going to start with funeral protocols, and Marquise Lacey from R.S. Lewis will come and present his information in his own way. Thank you. Marquise, you want this up?
We on the stand. Well, good morning to everyone. Good morning. Well, the privilege it is for us to be here today. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to stand before the Metropolitan members. Metropolitan, you all consider yourselves very privileged to have a church that has a CARES ministry that cares about preparing you for something that none of us will ever have the opportunity to escape. Look like everyone here is members, including me and my honorary membership. Two things, if I give you a little joke, two things if you want to make certain that you go to heaven: be a member of Metropolitan Baptist Church and allow R.S. Lewis to handle your family arrangements. You'll make it. Today we're talking about preparation, being prepared for end of life transition. If there's any questions, I'm gonna let you know on the front end, because of the fact that we have people that are on Zoom. If there are any questions in the room, when you ask the questions, I will repeat it and then I'll answer any questions that will be asked, so that those that are on Zoom will have the opportunity to hear the questions as well. I generally, when we are doing these type of seminars, I'm in a room with a lot of people who are not prepared. I can kind of tell that this room is a little bit more prepared, but still can tighten up some ends in preparations for family expenses and final arrangements. One thing I always ask is, I start off with asking, who all in the room has a cell phone? Everyone has a cell phone? How many of you all have insurance on that cell phone? Just in the event that something happens to that cell phone, you have that cell phone insured. How many of us have a vehicle? All of us have insurance on our vehicle. Now, how many of us in the room have life insurance that covers our life? And is it much more than just that you have on your job? Do you have a personal policy? What life insurance does, it secures the opportunity not only to take care of your final expenses, meaning your funeral services and your burial, but it also allows your family to be a little more secure, to be able to live without that extra income that you brought in at the same time, whether it be your husband, whether it be dependent children, grandchildren, or what have you. So it is always important. Now, here's the biggest question. Everyone in the room raised their hand and said that they do have life insurance. That's great. My greatest question is, and I oftentimes have people that come sit in my office and they sit across the desk from me, and the first thing they say, we got to find out if mama or if daddy had some life insurance. We have to find out where it is. We don't know any of that information. So my next question to you, who knows this information? And not only do they know the information as far as whether or not you have life insurance, who knows where this policy is? And the most important, who are the beneficiaries that you have left in place? Do we all have all that?
Yes.
I'm going to be leaving some booklets here for you all today. And these booklets have information in it where you can go ahead and put your information in, information such as who your insurance carrier is, the policy number, how much the policy is, who is the beneficiary. And one thing that we often fail to do, sometimes those that we have as beneficiary may pass before us, and we fail to go back and update that information. Do you have a contingent, just in case you fail to go and update that information? Do you have a contingent beneficiary who will come the primary beneficiary if your original primary beneficiary passes before you do? All these things it's a lot, and there's a lot of things that we don't want to talk about. I'm 44 years old. I've been talking about my funeral services since I was 15, and I hadn't died yet, all right? And so talking about it, making preparations, having things in order, it's not going to kill you. It is okay, and it is safe for you to talk to your loved ones and those that you have established to take care of your business after you're gone. It is okay for you to have that information. A little more detailed information that I'm leaving with in these books for each individual that's here today. You're able to put in, it's very specific. You can tell what you want to be dressed in, whether or not you want jury on, or if you don't want jury on. What type of services do you want to have? Do you want to be viewed, whether you don't want to be viewed? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be entombed in a wall, or do you want to be cremated? Do you want to give your body to science? It is a whole lot of detail that is in here that you all will be able to put this information in and then put it in a secure place and letting your loved ones know where this information is. One of the other things that we fail to do is, if you're a veteran, there is information that is needed. If you or your spouse want to be buried in the veteran cemetery, you all need to know where whoever the veteran is, where their veteran paperwork is. What's called a DD-214, that is the discharge paperwork, whether or not it lets us know and lets the cemetery know whether or not you are eligible for burial rights at the veteran cemetery. Those that DD-214 will give whether or not you're honorable or dishonorable on discharge. Now, we talked about having insurance. My next question is, do you have enough insurance? Having enough, I'll tell you, we all have our phones and we can Google this information, and you all, I'm certain everyone in this room watches a little television, and you see AARP commercials, Colonial Pens, different commercials as such, and they tell you the national average funeral cost is $8,500 as of right now. That's funeral costs. Let me explain to you what funeral cost is. Funeral cost is funeral home charges. They're non-declinable items such as making funeral arrangements, embalming, other preparations, dressing, casketing, cosmetics of the remains, transferring remains from the place of death to the funeral home. And I don't want to sound like I'm going too fast. If I am, you are welcome to stop me and ask any questions. The use of facility and or staff, whether it's at the funeral home or at the church for a visitation. Same for funeral service. And the hearse for the day of service, and one limousine. That is funeral costs. We hadn't selected so much of a casket. We hadn't selected an out of burial container, meaning a vault, because everyone doesn't necessarily have to have a vault. Everyone doesn't necessarily have to have a grave, because some are either being cremated or they have the option of going to the veteran cemetery, where the veteran cemetery, and I have a lot of families saying, oh, I'm a veteran and they're going to take care of everything. That's not the truth. Veterans are only eligible for a grave, opening and closing. The cemetery provides an out-of-burial container, and they provide a headstone. That is all that is given to a veteran. And even if you don't go to a veteran cemetery, they will still provide the headstone for whatever cemetery you're going to, whether it's an upright marker or a granite with a bronze top. So that is great information to have and to know on in advance. But going back to asking the question, do you have enough insurance? Most people say, oh, I'll retract. I see a lot of families come in and they will have an 85-year-old mother who's had a $5,000 policy since the 70s. Since the 70s. They've paid more into the policy than what the policy is actually worth. All right? Outside of that, we say, yeah, I'm insured, but it's not enough to cover. These are things that you still have to consider. And consider, most of us, I'm a father. I have a 23-year-old and a 17-year-old. And my 23-year-old has surpassed the age of 18, so I'm still taking care of her. So I'm so many of you in the room are still taking care of your adult children in some kind of way, whether you're helping them with their children or whatever. So you have to consider, yeah, I might have a $5,000 policy, I might have a $10,000 policy, but it's still not enough to cover my family expenses. And would my child really be able to handle burying me? So that's the beauty of this fellowship on this morning, where you all can gather in the churches, using this opportunity to educate you all more on what it is that we need to do to be better prepared. We have a lot of life lessons and life coaches that teaches us how to live, but no one actually teaches us how to die. It might sound funny, but we need to be prepared for that portion of life as well. Outside of looking into, some people are not insurable. When we reach a certain age, health conditions come about that we're not able to attain a life insurance policy, or even we might get to the age where it's just not affordable. So we have what's called pre-need, where you're able to come into the funeral home, you're able to select all the services that you so desire, you're able to pick out your casket, you're able to say what cemetery you want to go to, and you can begin to pay on that now. You can do it in a one lump sum payment. Just go ahead and pay for your services out of pocket now. You can do it where you pay monthly until you have paid it out. If you begin to pay on a pre-need, this is not insurance. This is not something that you got to do a health exam or anything for. What this is an opportunity for you all to come in and you create a pre-need, and you put it to the budget that is affordable for you. And then you can pick what price you want to pay each month. There's not a particular premium, there's not a particular due date, but you are able to continue to pay it until it's paid out, or at the time of your demise, then your family will be responsible for the balance. But the beauty of it is, in our ever-changing society that we're living in, we're living with tariffs and all those different price increases. The beauty of it is you're able to get it and lock it in at today's price when you do a pre-need, and versus 10 years down the road where a $7,000 funeral in 10 years is $14,000. You understand? Yes, sir, Ms. Rodney.
Question. Fortunately, my father had one of those pre-need things with Southern, and I guess fortunately he died before they went out of business. So if y'all go out of business before I die, what's gonna happen to that policy?
Great question. So, Mr. Rodney Jeffries asked the question, if R.S. Lewis is to go out of business prior to his demise, what happens to the pre-need that he has already put in place? So, what we're governed by through the state of Tennessee is we have to put that money in a trust. That money goes in a trust, and whether we're closed, whether R.S. Lewis is closed and we don't plan on closing, or whether R.S. Lewis is still in business, those monies are allocated to the servicing funeral home. Prime example, I had a person a couple of months ago who had a pre-need with a funeral home in the Michigan area. Upon him retiring and getting a little ill, his sister moved him here. Well, his services were paid for there in Michigan. Well, that money was in a trust, in a pre-need trust. Once he passed away, or I'll tell you this, while you're making those payments and that money goes into that trust, it is called an irrevocable assignment, meaning you can't go back and take that money back. It's in the trust. The only way that you can receive those funds is us presenting that trust with a death certificate. The servicing funeral home will be the recipient of those funds. That's
Great.
That answers your
That
question?
was my question.
All right. All right. Anyone else?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My question is, if a person passes away from out of town, you're out of town, you pass away, and you have to be brought back, how does that, can that be done? How does the insurance work for that, to get that person back?
Right.
Here, if that's where everything is, if they've already made arrangements and everything, how do you get, is there a cost that's gonna be for the family to get the person transported back here to the city where they want to be buried? That makes sense.
So the question that was just asked is if a person has a, you're asking if the person has a pre-need, like with R.S. Lewis. I'm gonna keep saying R.S. Lewis. I'm not gonna say another funeral home name. All right. So if a person has a pre-need with R.S. Lewis and they pass away out of town, and they've already prepared and had the monies allocated to R.S. Lewis, how do they go about paying for the expenses of getting the remains back to Memphis? Well, a part of that pre-need is the professional services of the funeral director and staff, us making funeral arrangements, as well as embalming. There's money already allocated there. You would contact the funeral home that you have the pre-need with, which is R.S. Lewis, and then R.S. Lewis will contract with a funeral home in that particular city where that person passes away with. And it is, we will take care of the embalming and the forwarding of remains. Now, it might be a little more than what is in the pre-need, but then you would pay the difference. But the embalming is already covered on our side, and it will be taken care of. We'll just contract to a funeral home that's in that city. They will make the removal, do the embalming, and they would do what's called forwarding of remains to us here in the city. All right. So, the beauty of a pre-need, the beauty of having a pre-need, as I stated earlier, is you're being able to secure a service at a lower cost, meaning at today's rate versus, and I see everybody in this room look like it's a little more longevity, so I don't see anybody going out this year, all right? So you have the opportunity for those funds to grow. Amen? Am I right about it, Mr. Harry Taylor?
Don't call my name.
Yes. So we have the opportunity. The beauty of it is you all are young enough right now where you can go ahead and start making your preparations, having things in order. You can even create your funeral program. That's the beauty of that as well. It is, let me say this to you, it is a stress and a strain on your loved ones once you are gone if you've never had this conversation. For someone to say, what would mama have wanted? What would daddy have wanted? You know, what was his favorite color? Mr. Taylor, yours is what, purple and gold?
Absolutely.
Okay, good enough. All right. So, I mean, we don't have to, so that we don't have to wonder about certain things. Who would mama want speaking on the program? Yeah, she's talked to Pastor Moore all the time, but she like Lady Moore speaking better than Pastor Moore. You know? So, I mean, just whatever. No shade to you, Pastor Moore. But when you don't have to wonder certain things and it's already in place and you've already communicated these things, I mean, my services are totally rolled out from all three outfits I'm aware, you know, for my services.
Watch out now.
It is so detailed. What color suit I'm wearing for my visitation, what color suit I'm wearing for the actual funeral service. And I'm not to be buried on the same day as my service because I had to go back and they got to put me in pajamas for my burial. I don't sleep in my suit So when I get ready to get married, I want to be in pajamas. So you can be very detailed with how you want to do things. You understand? Yeah. So that's just me. Everyone has their preference. Everybody has what they want. I have who I want to speak on program, who I don't want to do certain things, who's going to come and tell my family, you know, he wanted me. He did not. He did not. You understand? So it's always great to be prepared versus not being prepared. All right, Carol, you got any questions back there?
No, I'm good.
Hey, Aunt Carol. So good to see you. Yes, ma'am. So the question she just asked, and I'm so glad that she asked and stated it the way she did. She lives here in Memphis. She lived at one point in California. She's already had her grave opening and closing, all that taken care of there in California. That's where you want to go back to. But she doesn't want to be embalmed. Thank you. Now that you finally got into the funeral home that is a little more educated, can give you the proper answer, R.S. Lewis will handle all that for you. Let me tell you how we handle that. First of all, there's no law saying that you have to be embalmed. All right? So don't let anybody tell you that. That is a way of, that's a little more income. All right? Now, there won't be any viewing of the remains. Anyone who is wanting to be viewed after 24 hours, then yes, you have to be embalmed. There is no law stating that you have to be embalmed. We will sell you or your family a gasketed casket, and we will still dress you as such, put you in the casket. The casket will be sealed. A gasketed casket means the casket has a rubber seal that goes around it with a locking mechanism. Once the casket is sealed, it's closed, sealed, airtight, keeping all outside elements out, bugs, water, etc. And we will forward your unembalmed remains back to California. So as soon as you can, the first chance you get, you need to be calling R.S. Lewis Funeral Home to make your arrangements so your things will be in order for when it's time to forward your remains back to Forest Lawn.
So can I do that by purchasing the premium?
Absolutely.
What happens to your body when it's not embalmed? Because I got a girlfriend here. Her mother wasn't embalmed. She didn't want to be embalmed. So what happens to your body
So
when it's not embalmed?
So the question is, what happens to the remains when the body is not embalmed? Just what we know. Embalming is only a process that delays decompensation. All right? Embalming does two things. It preserves and it hardens the remains. You all have gone, you've touched someone, oh, they feel hard or what have you. So embalming is just a preserving. It only delays the process. Now, I can't speak to anybody else's embalmers, but R.S. Lewis has some great embalmers, and our delay is long. If you all think about Medgar Evers, he was disinterred after 28 years. And when they opened the casket of Medgar Evers, he looked the same, he just had a little mole on his nose. That came from three things. He had an amazing embalmer, he had a great casket, and he had a great vault. And it preserves. That's what embalming does. Unembalmed bodies, I mean, there's going to be decompensation. Decaying is coming.
It needs to be buried right away.
Well, if you're not being embalmed, yes. Yeah. But there, you can have a direct burial with no embalming. You know, generally you want to do that within 3 to 4 days. But at R.S. Lewis, we have something that's called refrigeration that will keep those unembalmed bodies. The refrigeration will delay the decompensation. All right.
At R.S. Lewis.
At R.S. Lewis. I can't speak for any other funeral home, but R.S. Lewis.
I'm a veteran, so I think veterans have carried on quite a bit. And
Not true. Not true. So let me just tell you, there are a whole lot of unclaimed veterans. Veterans who have been homeless or have died in the VA and there's no family, they're not embalmed. They still get their rights. You know, they're transported to West Tennessee State Veterans Cemetery and they have flags and taps, flag folding done, but they still get their rights and they're not embalmed. So that's not true. And sometimes the VA contracts through R.S. Lewis Funeral Home, and we go get unclaimed veterans, and it doesn't matter their race. We serve them all.
but they can also be cremated as well, right?
No, no. Burial is reversible. Cremation is not reversible. All right? So there's someone that comes up 5 years later. I've been looking for my daddy, and I want to take his remains and bury him in our family plot in some rural area. Well, where are the remains? They know where the remains are. We can go through the proper channels, proving who you are. You're the child of this person. You've been looking for this person. Get it approved. You can disinter that person. If you cremated them, yeah. Only way that the person can be cremated, you have to have the proper legal next of kin to be able to cremate. So a person passing away, your legal next of kin is first and foremost spouse, parents, or adult children. Well, adult children will go before parents, and then if there are no children, parents, and then if no parents, it's siblings. And we have to have a third of people that's in agreement. You got 5 siblings, and only 4 of them want you cremated, and it's that one that doesn't. Okay, I can get the 4 signatures. If I get 3 of those 5, I'm good. But if I can only get 2 and the other 3, we can't move forward with cremation. And so the question was, who can give authorization for cremation? That's what I was just explaining. Yeah. I'm gonna look at the time. I don't want to go over my time. I probably got like 3 more minutes. Any other questions? Well, I'm like the Baptist preacher. I gave you all 20 and gave you 5 back. Yes, sir.
You can let them know that if they have a free and it's with someone else, it can be transferred to R.S. Lewis.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Even if you have a pre-need, and Mr. Jeffers, I want to come back to another statement that you made. Even if you have a pre-need and you've done it with another funeral home, it is transferable. My friend who wants to go back to California, if at any point that you decide that you don't want to go back to California, you're able to sell your plot there. It is property, you own the deed to it, and you're able to sell it at today's cost. You probably bought it at a fraction of the price. I'm just gonna throw out the price. You may have bought it in California. The grave may have been $3,000. It was 8. Yeah. Today, I'm just telling you, today that actual plot probably costs anywhere $17,000, $18,000. You know, I bought some graves in 2001 at Memorial Park, and I paid $3,600 for 6 graves. And today, those graves, and I've used a few of them with yes, they are nowhere near that. One grave by itself is about $4,900, and I bought 6 for $3,600. But yes, it's just the same as I stated. Your trust, your funds, your pre-deed is in the trust. It can go to whatever service and funeral home you also desire. And everybody that's in this room and on this Zoom desires to go to, let me get that name again. R.S. Lewis. R.S. Lewis. R.S. Lewis. Just me.
If we want to create a pre-need, do we need to contact R.S. Lewis, set up an appointment? Is there a specific person?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So at R.S. Lewis, we have 2 people, and shockingly, I'm the person that's not doing the pre-needs, but I'm here doing the presentation with you all. But we have one of Metropolitan's own. We call her Amanda Leaks. What is Amanda's maiden name? Galloway. Amanda Galloway, who grew up here.
Ida Galloway's daughter.
Ida Galloway's daughter, who writes our pre-needs at R.S. Lewis. So yes, you can call R.S. Lewis any day of the week. We're there Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. Schedule a little appointment, come in, select your services, and we can begin the process of writing that pre-need. Ms. California? Thank you so much.
Marcus, one more thing you need to let you know, that we do make house calls.
Yeah.
We make house calls.
That was the other thing that I was going to say.
But pre-need is what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
we will come to you if it is more convenient for us to come there. I'm coming to you on Carol. Is it more convenient for us to come to you? We have no issue with coming to you for scheduling of a pre-need.
I just wanted to ask, with the premium, do you pay on that monthly, or how does that work?
So, Ms. Carol Tate is asking, how does the pre-need work? As I was stating earlier, there's no minimum premium and there's no due date. You just, once you set up your pre-need, you can begin to pay your pre-need as often as you want, as much as you want. You understand? Just as long as you pay for it prior to your demise. In the event you pass away before you have completed paying, your family will owe the balance. And it's not like that money is lost. So, thank you all for this time.
A question.
I will be leaving. Hold 1 second.
Great job.
All right. Somebody said question?
No,
Yeah,
I just said, great job.
It's on Zoom. Someone
Yeah.
on Zoom is speaking.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is Vicky. So you can't use your life insurance for payment of pre-needs since you can't, lack of a better word, use your life insurance until after you die, correct? Or is
So,
that,
is that Miss Vicky Lacey?
Yeah.
that's me, that's
Hey,
me.
Miss Vicky. Miss
And that-
Vicky is asking the question about using life insurance to pay for your pre-need. If you come in and begin your pre-need, what we normally do, you have to open that trust up with a minimum of at least $250, all right? And once you start that, open the trust. If you don't pay anything else into the trust and you want to use your insurance to pay the balance of your funeral services, yes, you are able to use the insurance. You can't start the trust with the pre-need with your insurance, but you can definitely satisfy the trust with your life insurance policy.
And that's not making the funeral home or whomever you're pre-need with, that's not making them a beneficiary of your life insurance.
No. Your beneficiary would still be your loved one.
Okay,
But you have to make it loud and clear to them. When you go, you want to go to R.S. Lewis Funeral Home.
well, they know that, Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there? Thank you all so much. And you all know, most black people, we like our services on Saturday, so in just a second, I'll be easing out the door, but I'm gonna leave all this literature here for you all right?
One question.
Yes, sir.
Say if a person has to, if they're faced with a loved one who transitions and they want to reach out to R.S. Lewis, say bodies at the hospital, bodies at the house, can you explain a little bit about that process that they're looking at contacting you? Because a lot of families may not necessarily know the first steps in finding out if a person is transitioning.
Okay, well, Dr. Moore has asked that we explain the first step of making contact and selecting R.S. Lewis Funeral Home. whether your loved one passes at home, out of state, in a hospital, in a nursing facility, in a hospice facility, wherever your loved one should pass away, after you gathered yourself, take a moment, gather yourself, and after you've gathered yourself, your first point of contact is R.S. Lewis. I can speak for only R.S. Lewis. The wonderful staff there at R.S. Lewis, once you've made that initial phone call, the rest, you're just setting cruise control, because we're going to take you over from there. We're going to guide you throughout the process, and we're going to handle it in a professional, caring, expedient manner for you. But not, when I say expedient, nothing that you're going to be stressed out about. We will take it from there. We will guide you on how, and looking throughout the room, there's 2 or 3 people in here that we've had the opportunity to service before, and once the contact was made, we had it from there, you know.
I just want, I had actually used R.S. Lewis, and this is the gentleman that showed up. My brother died in an assisted living facility. I called Melly. Melly was the one that got in touch with him, and they came out, they did what they had to do. It was on a Saturday. I told him I wanted him to be buried by that Wednesday. He was buried by that Wednesday. He was a veteran. He took care of everything. He was like he just said to you, it's on cruise control. The only thing my brother and I had to do was go in, meet him, and sign the paperwork that said go ahead and do what he had to do. But it was the easiest situation that we had to deal with.
And I promise you, we'll do that for each and every last one of you,
Yeah,
whether you're
they
a member
did
of
it for me
Metropolitan or
too.
not. Yes, ma'am.
My mother died at home, and my son said, "What do you want to hear?" I said, "I already know." They made the call, and he was still now.
Yes, ma'am.
Everything was fine.
So thank you so much, and we want to continue that legacy. And let me say this to you: there was an old campaign, I think during Clinton administration. I think it was Clinton administration. Each one teach one. Don't hold this information in this room. Share it with your family. Share it with your friends. But most importantly, share it wherever you are. Whether you're at the YMCA working out, whatever you're doing, share this information. We should all extend this knowledge to all of our friends and loved ones. No one should have, when you lose a loved one, that is stress within itself. We don't need added stress. And the beauty of it is, when you share the information that you have, not only do you share the information, but say, hey, I know if you're home that can take care of you as well. Call R.S. Lewis. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
You all know we love R.S. Lewis here at the Met. And just to back up with some other testimonies, we had a family member that passed out of state. And it was no doubt in my mind, once we took care of the services in Chicago and the body was going to be brought back here, let me tell you something, y'all. If you know me, you know I text all hours of the day and night, because you know I don't sleep. Marquise was probably saying some real unchurch-like words when he got a text at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. What we need to do next? He said, I got this, Miss Deborah. I said, okay, well, what I need to do? I got this. And guess what, y'all? He had this. Southwest Airlines was called. That chick flew first class, you know what I'm saying? I ain't even been on first. I mean, red carpet, the whole 9, and I didn't have to worry about anything. And so R.S. Lewis took care of everything from leaving Chicago to getting here to Memphis to even making me connected with the person at the cemetery and the whole 9. So I'm voting for R.S. Lewis, okay? And that's what we're doing in my house, me and my family, me and mine, okay? So I appreciate you all so very much. Thank you. Next, we will have our own Dr. Moore and Deacon Harry Taylor are going to come up and talk about how we need to do some things a little bit differently and how we're moving forward with processes and procedures here at the Met. So in their own way, they're going to come and take it away.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
All right, I'm one. Can we give Marquise another round of applause? I think he did an excellent job. And we're gonna start off with a fun activity. I'm just gonna be sharing some stuff for you all. I'm gonna share some things with you all, and then we're gonna start off with a fun activity. And really, let me tell you all, the goal for this gathering was just to make sure that we can have information, that we can be empowered. Knowledge is power, right? And I believe here at Metropolitan, as we create all these different opportunities for us to learn and grow, that we're empowered in the process. All right, we don't want to find ourselves just not knowing if there's an opportunity for us to know. And so I'm thankful. I learned some things here today just from what Marquis shared, and so I felt like I was in a professional development setting, even for myself, learning about things so I can continue to work and support parents. And so I'm glad that we have deacons who are here. I'm glad that we have officers who are here from the church, because how many of us come across a person who's never had to go through the process of burying a loved one before? Raise your hand. Have you had to come across a loved one who's never buried a loved one before, or somebody you know that says, I've just never been through this before? Anybody? By show of hands, right? And it can be unnerving. It can be challenging. It can feel like a just sea of responsibility before you, because persons are navigating the loss and the grief and also the business of trying to conduct a homegoing service. Now let me tell you all a couple things about myself. So your pastor has been in ministry 21 years. I started preaching at the age of 16 years old. I've been in ministry for 21 years. And so a couple of things that I've experienced in my ministry journey, just a couple of fun facts. Do y'all know I used to work in a funeral home when I was in college? And can anybody guess what I did when I worked at that funeral home? Huh? No. You got to have certifications to involve. I picked up bodies. So I picked up bodies, went to hospitals and all other places like that to pick up bodies. I drove hearses and limos. And also I cleaned up the preparation area. So I worked for a historic funeral home called the A.D. Price Funeral Home in Richmond, Virginia. When I was in college, making a few extra bucks, one of my good buddies who was a religious studies major at Virginia Union along with me recruited me to come on and be a part of that. So I was able to see a lot of those things there. And also another fun fact, before I came to you all to serve as the senior pastor, while I served as the pastor of the Mount Vernon Baptist Church, the Jenkins Funeral Home in Richmond, right in the West End, which was right around the corner from our church. It was the preferred funeral home of the Mount Vernon Church, and often because of the relationship that took place and how strong it was between the Mount Vernon Church and the Jenkins Funeral Home, they often called on me to come and eulogize persons who did not have someone to say words about them at their final demise. Now I ask, really quick, and I have a question for you all. What does it mean to have a eulogy? What's the purpose of a eulogy? I know some more smart, yeah, eulogy. Oh, sorry. Tell something about that person's life. Deacon Aikman? Sorry? Closure. Right? Any other questions? Any other remarks about that? Words of inspiration to the family. Dr. Chris, same thing. All right. A eulogy, translated, means to speak well of. Right? To speak well of. That's literally the definition, formal definition of a eulogy, where it translates. So when we're talking about eulogizing a person, right, the goal is to speak well of. Now, the thing about a Christian service, right, because there are funeral services that happen regardless of a denominational affiliation, regardless of a faith, expression, anything else like that, right? Because all of us who have made an entrance here also have an exit, all right? All right? And so, because of that, right, I want to talk to you all about Christian service, because there are different values, right, based on faith. Y'all know that? What are some things that are important in a Christian service as it relates to a homegoing celebration? What are some things that are important that make it a sound, important homegoing celebration?
Reverence for the Lord.
Reverence for the Lord, right? Right? Because it's in a Christian tradition, whether it's at a funeral home or a chapel or in a church, right? So, including God in the matter. Dr. Chrissy, you had something?
Reference to heaven, because as Christians, we believe that there is reality
course. So talks about faith and and also talking about what is to come, right? So anything else?
So the educator in me says order.
Order.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gotta be some type of, doesn't have to be thematic, but some type of order, some type of set, sound order.
Okay, that's great. Anything else? Y'all missing some stuff that. What do we normally do at a Christian homegoing service? We celebrate. We have songs, right? We have songs that communicate faith.
It's short, it's not long, it's not drawn out.
We're not talking about time. That's
Suffering is over.
Yeah.
So it's not a drawn out.
It's a celebration of life, right? So when we talk about Christian homegoing services, it's a celebration of life. That's what we say in our Christian tradition. Why? Because we grieve differently. So I'm talking theology now, right? Because of our theology, right, and our soteriology, right? One, theology is this God talk. Soteriology is what we believe about salvation. Because of what we believe about salvation, it's all expressed in the funeral service, right? And so when we talk about salvation for a person who has experienced the gift of salvation, then in the homegoing celebration, we're able to celebrate their relationship with Christ as a top priority. Why do I say that? Well, if you look at any type of program, right, you're going to have things like readings of Scripture, right? And oftentimes, what do persons do? They select their favorite scriptures, right? Old Testament, New Testament readings. These are scriptures that either anchored a person or reflect things that will help to give strength and comfort to the family, that to let them know that their loved one is in good hands, right? While we, talk about 23rd Psalm, it's communicating something about what? The Lord being our shepherd. You see, all of what we do in homegoing services are messaging not only for the family of the loved one, but for all of those who are exposed to this moment. Because as we gather together, homegoing services are not only a celebration of life, but it's an opportunity for evangelism that really speak to the sermon that one lived, right? So eulogies, as we come back to them, everyone's life has a sermon. Everyone here in this place, their life has a sermon. So when we're preparing for the opportunity to speak well of one's life, I don't have to know a person their entire lives to know that their life has been a sermon, right? Well, how do I do that? Well, I talk to the people they touched and they impact. They've been able to impact, right? What they speak about a person. And oftentimes, what you find is that there's a common theme, common thread, common drive for a person that really has summarized their lived experience. Then we think about how Scripture attaches to that. And then we bring out details that help the family to know of how they live their life and their legacy, and for all those who are gathered in the space. And so I say to you, the most important thing in a homegoing celebration is the eulogy. Because it is the partnering, it's the marrying of the faith and the life of the deceased. Right? It is the highest point in the Christian homegoing celebration. Now you all have this here. Go ahead and break it out. Now how many of you all knew that? Right? Seems like common knowledge. But did you know why it is so important? It is the marrying of one's life and faith. Right? And so that's why clergy are called upon to do so. So we're going to go through, and all I'm going to do today, because we all know this, right? These are things that were existed actually before I came here to the church, and we just tried to find a way to give more information to everyone. There are some things that reflect how our church has been impacted by the pandemic, and also how our church has been impacted by just the life of our congregation. So, what does it take to put on a funeral? A homegoing service here at Metropolitan. Building. What else? Somebody said libations. Patience. Oh, I heard libations. That may be. I think sometimes. Come on, y'all breathe a little bit. Y'all look nervous out here today. It takes. Somebody said some libations. That's what I heard. You know, pouring out in remembrance of a loved one, that kind of thing. Do it in remembrance of me. All right. So what does it take? So it takes what? Building. What else? Lights. People. So we had a lot of volunteers to help to make a funeral happen, don't we? Who volunteers? Who steps up? What ministries are activated in the life of a church? The ushers. So we got the ushers. Who else? Music ministry, the choir, right? Who else? Technology people, people in the media booth, right? Security, right? The administrative and staff. So when we have a homegoing service, 9 times out of 10, all hands are on deck. We rely upon ushers. We rely upon our choir. We rely upon people in the technology booth to run our cameras. We rely upon our security team, our internal security team, and our external security team. We rely upon our bereavement committee. We rely upon people to prepare food. We rely on people to clean up the church beforehand. We rely on people to clean up the church afterwards. We rely on lights to be on. We rely on water to be running. We rely on somebody to be in the pulpit to speak and to preside over our worship service. I mean, all throughout a homegoing service, it requires what? All hands on deck. So, when we think about that, right, how we function as an organization to be sustainable has to have a what? Process, right? We see how it's important to have a process. So, I'm going to, this is really an empowering time. This is not to make anyone feel uncomfortable or anything like that. This is to make sure that we can be empowered and excited. Now, you got a process. Now I wanted to make a guess. How much does it cost Metropolitan every time someone dies? How much does it cost? Just give me some estimates.
With the food and everything and time and.
Think about how much food costs.
Do we pay for security?
We pay for security.
A couple of thousand.
At least $2,000 every time somebody dies that we do not recoup. Right? So this is my shameless plug that in your estate planning, consider your church. That is an opportunity for you to give to your church after you have been called home to be with the Lord. And truth be told, you don't need it anyway because you've been called higher, right? You can't take it with you. So why don't you leave it to us to do the Lord's work? Can I just have a shameless plug? Just consider your church. Now, I'm telling you, look, your children and other folk, they're not going to try to give it to the church. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. You have to put it. That's why we got some estate planners here and some lawyers to show you how to do that. Consider your church. Every single funeral that we have here, the cost is at least $2,000 a head. So we have to pay for, think about it, we have to pay for security. We have to pay for food. We have to make sure that there are clean things on the tables, right? We have all these different needs. And so it gets expensive. And here it is, Metropolitan, the longer the services and proceedings, the more it costs. The longer it is, the more it costs, and we end up paying the bill, right? We end up with that bill. Why? Because it's a ministry. So there's certain things that we do that are part of our ministry of how we show up for our loved ones, right? But in order to make it sustainable and to think about how we can continue to, one, consider the needs of our volunteers, right? We got folk who show up out of their love for the Lord, right? And they volunteer, and they give up their days, right, to serve. How many of us have been here and served? Many of us who volunteer. We have all these people on deck. We pay people to be here, all that other stuff like that. And so, with that, we try to, this is why we're training you all and sharing what's really been already in place, right? So, we experience difficulty pulling volunteers in, right? So that's why we have our funerals primarily on Saturdays. Now, because of the fact that we have hundreds of people in a space, because of the fact that we need to use our security team, because of the fact that we have to have these screens on and stream the service, we got to have people in place. It takes at least 3 people to run that booth. right? They have to be here. We're relying on them. Extra effort wins, so we got to have a what? Process, right? So that's why we primarily have our services on Fridays. Now the church is, on Saturdays. Now, church is normally open, so the church opens, in terms of for business, right? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So the church is normally closed on Thursdays. The church is being cleaned on Fridays and prepared for the week. So there are times when, because we have to reset, we have several programs going on here in this 69,000 square foot building, right? So when we are talking about these things, we have to think about the business aspect and all of the logistics that go into place, right? That makes sense? Y'all following me? What you talking about? Oh, my time is up?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. So I'm giving you all these things because those are most important, right? So when we talk about this, let's talk about the order of service. And then what we're going to then go into is then we're going to talk about, just very briefly, just a couple of things. Now here is something for you all to read in your own spare time, right? And it's also a guide because as you're talking about pre-needs with R.S. Lewis and other things like that, this gives you all the opportunity to think about at least what a basic service looks like. And this is something that can help because we come across a lot of times persons who have never had the honor or really the responsibility of bearing a loved one. So let me run through it real quick and then I'll call on Deacon Taylor to talk about music and in terms of like inviting guests and other things like that. We have our minister of music here, and I'm glad that he's here, and we have staff here as well, so they can chime in on some of the things. So of course, prelude and a processional. A processional is when the family comes into the sanctuary and they are seated. Normally families gather in the vestibule and they are coming in and they have, of course, the final viewing, and then they go and they take their seats. What we have here is a song. Normally there's an opening song, right? And normally it's done by the choir of the church. It's an opportunity to really just to start the service, to set the tone for the service as it's a celebration of life, right? And then we have the reading of scripture. Normally what we have is an Old Testament and New Testament scripture reading. And remember what we were talking about as it relates to scripture, right? That is to remind people of either what the Lord can do for them or scriptures that provided support for that loved one throughout their life, okay? Y'all got it? So you don't have to use, John 14. You don't have to use those things. It can be a reflection of the loved one, right? Or it can be, as you're planning your own service, right? It can be a reflection of a New Testament scripture. What's my favorite New Testament scripture, right? What do I want my family to hear, right? That would empower them. The Old Testament scripture just the same. We often have a prayer or prayer of comfort, where that specific prayer, and I'm telling you the purpose of these things, the prayer of comfort is exactly what it means. It is a person rendering a prayer for the comfort of the family and those who are gathered in that place. Scriptures are read, right, because it's a Christian service, and it is to reflect scriptures of faith to help to set the tone for that. Normally, a clergy person or a lay leader like a deacon is called upon or identified to read. Got it? All right. Then we have, of course, the prayer. Now, in here, we often have reflections or expressions. They are optional, okay? Now, one of the things that we do not do here at Metropolitan, because it lets services just go off the rails, right? And we talked about the need for order, the need for certain things to move forward. We don't have open reflections where anybody can just stand up and come down, right? We don't do that. That often gets out of hand very quick, and it leads to embarrassing situations for the family. Now, before I go any further, right, the pastor of the church, the senior pastor of the church, is always the one that presides over the service unless someone else is designated by the pastor. That's not just protocol, that's our bylaws. The pastor of the church is to take charge over every worship service here at Metropolitan, right? Because that pulpit has been entrusted to that pastor by the vote of the members of the Metropolitan Church. Y'all got it? So the pastor has to make the hard decisions about what happens in the pulpit, specifically because whoever stands in that pulpit is responsible or takes or has an opportunity to shape the spiritual health of whoever's listening, right? The pulpit empowers a person's voice. So you have to make sure that what the people hear has a solid quality, which means in any church, right? Any person going to, so if I'm going to go do someone else's eulogy, because I have family members, I've eulogized them, I always talk to and get the approval of the pastor first before I step in that pulpit. It is the pastor's responsibility and the pastor's responsibility only to make decisions of who comes in and out of that pulpit. Right? So, when we talk about reflections, we normally ask persons and families to pre-designate who they are going to have to share. Now, we normally ask between 3 to 5 persons. That's basically our policy, right? We've been flexible with families because, you know, there are a lot of things that often come up and we don't want to complicate persons' grief, right? But this is why, okay? Because reflections are optional. It's a Christian service, right? The most important thing is what? The eulogy. Where do people often trying to steal the spotlight? Reflections. Very simple. You don't want to complicate the experience for those who have taken time, prepared, prayed, researched, written, how they're going to stand and address this congregation with words of faith. They have heard from the Lord. No one else has. They may have talked to the Lord, but no one else has spent time hearing from the Lord as to what is needed to be said to this body, right? And so we want to make sure that as it relates to the service, that it leads to this crescendo, right? It's just constantly leading to this high point as we prepare to take the person to the cemetery. And that's just common, right? That's something I learned before I arrived here. That's something I experienced even working at funeral homes, other things like that, right? And so we try to think about how those reflections will impact the overall time of a service. Now, people are normally given what? 2 to 3 minutes, right? Do people often follow that? Okay. So normally what I try to share with families, you talk about 3 to 5 persons, right? So you say max of 5. When you have 5 people, right? Say if they take 10 minutes apiece. How long is that? That's an hour, right? If somebody says, well, I'm going to take 5 minutes, right? 5 people, 5 minutes. How long is that?
45 minutes.
That is 25 minutes, right? That's in half an hour. So, right? Not including all the other things that are going on. So what we try to do, because we have persons who are older, we have persons that have to take medicine, we have persons who have to use the bathroom. How many of y'all had to go to the bathroom in the middle of a service, or it was taking too long, you had to get up and leave, right? Because you had an obligation. So we try to be mindful of those things for the protection of the family so that people can really take advantage of being able to experience the eulogy, right? And of things that help to celebrate. So we have songs, we have words of comfort. Now this is something that's unique to this area, right? Something that's unique to this area. Can someone speak to the history of words of comfort? Now I've not had or seen words of comfort on any other program in my entire 21 years of ministry until I came here. So somebody with a little bit more history can maybe speak to what words of comfort mean. Normally, how I've interpreted when I've been asked to do so, it's just an opportunity to provide words of comfort specifically to the family, because what do we translate eulogy to be? What? To speak well of. That's what it translates to. So sometimes what I presume is that it's an opportunity for a second eulogy, right? That's how it's been used. Y'all talk honestly.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's okay. It's not supposed to be that. No, you know, and so this is the only place
It's done
I've seen
as a
it.
matter of courtesy in many cases.
Okay.
Because the family may have a minister that's there.
Yes.
And they want to include him some sort of way in the program. I've seen that inserted in a lot of programs.
Right, and so that is something that I've learned and embraced since being here, right? And so we've continued that tradition because that's something that we often employ and use, right? But for the words of comfort, it is an opportunity for a clergy person who can speak well of prayer. And it's something that is here based on this region. Yes, Deborah?
And sometimes the words of comfort are more or less like the eulogy, whereas the eulogy itself is a sermon inviting people to Christ on behalf of that person.
Right.
So it's not it's not always about the person. So then you have both.
Right.
With words of comfort.
And so, and you bring up a great point, because there are some services where there is a invitation in Christian discipleship, right? Where somebody may say, I want somebody to be extended an opportunity to come to Christ. Now, here's the thing. Now, this is just my own professional training. We try to shy away from that. Why? Because it's an emotionally charged environment, and people cannot make sound decisions, right? So it's like you're pinching people into a corner, and they want to respond because of their grief. And it doesn't necessarily create for an opportunity for healthy faith, right? Which is, the eulogy is not a sermon. The eulogy is what? Designed to speak well of, right? And so because in a Christian service, persons have lived their life of faith, there is an opportunity to speak well of them by way of their faith. Y'all got it? Cool. All right. Okay, eulogy, processional. Now sometimes there are songs, and you want to invite somebody. We often make sure that our choir is available, right? Normally what happens is, if person or loved one passes, we try to, like R.S. Lewis does, try to create a very easy and simple process. So our minister of music will often consult with families to make sure that they can know, hey, what songs are you thinking about? Those things like that. And the families have an opportunity to do so. Families have an opportunity to choose the scripture. Families have the freedom to be able to select persons within the time, within that range of number, who will be able to share those reflections. Families have the opportunity to write the obituary. Families have the opportunity to, like I said, select the songs and even ask for someone who provide the words of comfort. If a family is ever in a situation where they don't have anyone to do those things, the church will furnish all of that, because that's what we're here for. So oftentimes what happens is the pastor or a deacon will be a point of contact to help people. Now, last thing I want to say is that Deacon Harry Taylor is going to come, because he's going to talk about some things that you should know, or even when you're looking at securing a person to come, right, and be on program, just some things that happen for outside the church. But at the end of the day, because of keeping quality assurance, right, it is the pastor's job to approve every program, right? It's a quality assurance thing, right? Because of the pastor's given charge of the pulpit, the pastor, by way of the pastor's job, has to do quality control. That's not an easy job, right? And so y'all help me make my job easier by also listing out your wishes, because that helps families oftentimes who may not know what to do or what a person may need. That helps because we can honor your wishes in the best way possible. All right?
Question.
Yes.
If there's a non-member that wants to use the church and rent it out, is there a cost?
Yes.
And what is that?
So there's a cost. So we have a whole sheet. So it depends whether they want to use the prayer chapel. So we have and I'll make sure that it's printed and available before we leave. So normally there's a cost. And so if it's a person who's not affiliated with the church, there's a cost for persons to rent the church from if they're not a member. And then if we have a special members cost for renting facilities here at the church. And so those, of course, are discounted costs versus the non-member fee. So there's a charge, of course, for the sanctuary to use the space. There's a charge because we got to pay for lights and everything else like that to keep it running. There's a charge to make sure that whoever is in that booth, right, because we have to make sure that we have staff there to take care of that. That's outside of the normal responsibilities of our building engineer. So they would have to there would be a fee for the building engineer as well, and also other just things based on what they needed. So if they wanted to use the kitchen, there would be a fee for that. But we try to make sure that we work with families. But of course, our main priority is to try to support our members at our church. That's why, I mean, and the reason why we have it all lined out, and I think our trustees kind of manage those policies, those numbers, but I'll make sure that that's printed. And that helps to make sure that as we extend ourselves, we're not setting ourselves up to kind of be taken advantage by persons who want to kind of get something for free. That's it. Does that answer your question? Maybe not all the way, because you need the exact figures. I can print that out. I'll print it out once I'm finished. Anything else? Yes.
May,
I'm just gonna say that, I served as executive pastor in Richmond for First Baptist South Richmond. And so I saw a lot of members and non-members who, needed to utilize the church for funerals. And members and non-members were charged to use it. So the fact that, because it is a cost, so the fact that Metropolitan does not charge members for funerals and, or wakes, or the, fraternity and sorority ceremonies that happen here is amazing, because it's a lot of money. And when people start dropping like flies at times, and there's a funeral every week, those costs really do, add up.
It provides a strain on the budget, right? But what I'm appreciative of is that I really do admire the way that our members care for one another, show up for one another. I think that's a great thing. At my last church, we charged for different things. Even if you were a member or not, there were certain just expectations, and families were fine with it. It still created opportunities there. One of the other things I'll say, there are some charges, right? So if you want to have a wake on a Friday, right, the church is normally closed, so we have to bring in staff that's above their different responsibilities. So you have to secure the cost. We got to pay for the security. So the family would be responsible for the security, all those other things like that. We've tried to work with families to make sure that they don't have those concerns. But if there are things, right, that a little bit above and beyond, outside what we've discussed, there are some fees. What we try to do is keep them nominal. And if there are, so we pay for all the food. We pay for all the food for a repast for up to 75 persons. Outside of that, we would then have the family reimbursed for the cost. And that's also very generous, because food is extremely expensive. My last church, we would just provide the paper products, and that was it. And families had to pay for all of their own food. And so, I mean, the fact that Metropolitan does that is extremely generous. Yeah.
Question online.
Okay.
Vicky, you have a
oh,
question?
yeah. Well, it wasn't a question. I just wanted to say something about Reverend Moore and eulogies. He eulogized my niece's mother, and I don't think he ever met Sheena, but he talked about Sheena like he had known Sheena all his life. And Sheena, he even made me feel good about her. I just wanted to commend Reverend Moore on that eulogy. I think I told him about it then, but I just wanted to let y'all know Reverend Moore, yes, he is very good. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Vicki. And I appreciate that. It's walking with families through their time of need is something that I take pride in, and walking with them and supporting them. I think there was a young lady just last week, Dr. Pinkston. We were able to be with her and her family. And what I found is that, that service was 37 minutes. 37 minutes long, and it was just lovely. And I had never met her before, but what I'm able to do is reflect the love that the family has for that person, which is why we take the time to meet with the family, to absorb all the love that they have for them, and then we reflect that from the pulpit. So it's something that I take an honor and privilege in doing, because I always want Metropolitan to be represented well, and I want our families to be represented well, and the legacy of said persons. All right, if there are any other questions for me, if not, I'm going to turn it over to Deacon Taylor. He's going to speak for just a few minutes, and then we have one more presenter. And thank you all so much for your patience and for being here today. All right, any other questions for me? Great, thank you guys.
I was
You
hoping
can
they
hold
had
on to
another
this,
question. I was hoping there was another question. This won't be very long. One of the things that happens to me is because I sing, a friend of mine called me one day and said, I got 80 funeral programs at home, and your name on all of them. Not as the honoree, but the fact that I sang at the programs, and I didn't realize I sang at that many funerals. But as I look back, I can remember those now. But I guess when Pastor and I talked about this, I guess he asked me to come because of my experience, and that's what I want to share with you. My experience here in terms of funerals, from let's go from the beginning. Musicians, let me just talk from the music part. Y'all call us at the last minute. You think we supposed to produce all kinds of stuff. And the one thing I'd like for you to do as a family member, get with your family. Talk about it. Find out the things that you really want to portray on that individual. Make sure that it is a salute to that person. Don't bring in the hip-hop music. Let me tell you, the other day, you know that fan thing y'all be doing? I looked at a funeral, and they did the fan dance up in front of the casket. I'm thinking that was, in my estimation, it was disrespectful. But the family loved it. And I got to tell you, it's really the family that we're trying to take care of at that time. We want to have a celebration, but we want to have an appropriate celebration. But I say to you, as family members who are planning a funeral, make sure you contact the musicians. Determine your music. Talk with your family members. Don't all get in there and say, we don't want to sing that song, sing this song. No. Work with your people early so that we can print the programs and have it available for people when they come in, so we won't have to be guessing at what's going to happen. Some songs, they're going to turn down. Some songs, the pastor probably going to turn down. But we have to be careful in what we do, because we're making preparations, as the pastor said, speaking well of. We should come in a moment to celebrate this individual. We should come. The processional ought to be the beginning of that celebration. That ought to be, you ought to bring them in a way that you want the people to know that they are worthy of all the things that you give to them. They're worthy of this celebration. The end should be the whole celebration. When you walk out of here at the recessional, it ought to be joy. Because you have reached the point where you're sending that loved one off to glory. We all want to assume it's going to glory because they're here at Metropolitan. We might miss the boat, some of us, but the deal is you have to be careful how you do what you do. People interpret the funerals that you give for your loved ones, and they attribute it to your families. And sometimes they're not always the most complimentary of things because you didn't do it the right way. Consider the music. Consider making sure that the people that you want to participate in that program have enough notice so they can do a good job for you, so they can be representative of you. Again, I've sang at more than 100 funerals, I'm sure, but I always make sure I'm there early so I can see what's going to be happening during that program. I don't want to be totally out of order. So I've actually left a funeral and put on a tie because I went to the funeral without one, but when I got there, everybody was dressed up. Sometimes you have to make those decisions because of the audience that you have. That audience sort of dictates what you're going to do and want to do. You've got people who like certain kinds of music. Ask, you don't have to ask. You know what music your folks prefer. You already have. When they die, you sit up and say, she loved to hear this song. Or when they die, he loved to hear this song. Those songs are already in your heart. They're already in your mind. Use those as a source. But remember, you celebrate the process. And it's a celebration at the end of the process. But if you don't do anything else, make sure you contact your musicians, talk to them, let them know what you need. Tell them the songs you prefer. Because some people ask for songs that we don't sing. And some people ask for songs that I don't even know. I remember, and I'll tell you this, I remember going to a funeral one time and the gentleman that was supposed to sing the song didn't show up. It was a Spanish song. They asked me, they said, Mr. Taylor, do you know Spanish? I looked around the room, I said, who in here speaks Spanish? If don't nobody speak Spanish, yes, I got you. But you go to different things. Listen, and again, just to tell you about, different places require different things. If you sung at Churches of Christ, there's no music. I actually went in to sing, and I thought I had a musician. They said, no, they can't play that song. I had to sing it a cappella. There's some, I went to one funeral, Hispanic. I can't tell you it was religious, but it was some sort of cultural thing that they had. And in their culture, the body is sitting there while you singing and while you're doing whatever you're doing. And then at the end, they all say goodbye. And they roll him out, and then you can leave. That wasn't the best experience I've had, because I was simply scared to death. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm sitting up here saying, is this man really dead? If you think about it, people have different things that they do. I remember as a child, does anybody ever go to a wake in a house? Yes. Yeah. If you've never been to a wake in a house, that's an experience to behold. Because that's where they lived. They're in their environment. And some people want you to sing. Now, if you ever sung in a room about big as that, with 300 people in it, you're just lucky to get a note out. But they will ask for it. And the family has a need. And what are we there for? To take care of the family. And that's what we want to do. I refuse to. Am I in the way? Oh, you. Oh. Okay. I absolutely refuse to not sing at a funeral when somebody asks me. I'm impelled to say yes. My growth here in Metropolitan was based on that sort of thing. That my calling, and I consider it just that, my calling is to serve God. And if I serve him in that manner, then I'm doing the job that he wants me to do. I don't want to be in a pulpit, but I love to sing for the Lord. But I also know what's good to sing for the Lord and for the people. Over the years, I've determined that there are ways that you can talk to people and give them information that will last forever. And there are some things you'll do and say that they will remember about 15 minutes after you get through. Now, that's all I got to tell you, because we're short of time, but I do listen about.
I would like to suggest that if you have people who are singing, that they come early so we will know what they're singing, the key they're singing in. And I've seen them come from the back of the room when they're called to sing. We don't know what they're going to do.
The other thing too, absolutely, Ms. Lofton, we don't know what they're saying, and we don't know.
Could you
Okay.
repeat what she said?
Ms. Lofton said from.
I said from experience, understand. If you're
Come on up to the mic then, please.
And also speak to what one offers a person when they're invited to come and speak, or to speak, right? So if somebody invites you to come and sing at their funeral, what is proper protocol? What's something to express gratitude?
Now, what about
One thing that
come in here to speak?
Yes.
Visitors who come.
The one thing we really, really have to pay attention to is that if you invite people from outside to sing or play our instrument, we need to know that. That needs to be clear before you bring somebody in. We've come in on a number of occasions where people sit in our instrument and we didn't know who they were. And that's not supposed to be the case.
What I was saying is that if you are having someone to sing that we're not familiar with, it's not a member of our church, would you please ask them to come early and come to the music room where we will normally be so that we can get the key that they sing in and know what they're singing, and don't wait until it's time to sing and come from the back of the sanctuary. That's my request.
Bruh Bruce, I know Deborah, we're a little bit long gone with, but
And you are.
Bruh Bruce, he needs to say a word because he has some things on this too.
Thank you. It is the music department's job to help the family in any way that we can to celebrate the life of their family. So when you figure out, and Pastor's already said this, when you figure out what it is that you want, please contact the church, and they will contact me. They will give you my number, and we can talk about what it is that you want done. It's important, as Ms. Lofton has said, that we know who's singing and what they're singing, because we don't want to mess up, and we will stop playing, okay, if we can't find Q and they supposed to be singing in S, we will stop. We don't want to do that. We want to support the person that is singing. Now, Jalene also said something that is important, is that if you have some kind of music or videos that you want to be presented, you need to get with them as well. If you have a track of a song that needs to be played, please also get with them so that they can be ready for it. And that's pretty much it. So we need to know as soon as possible what kind of music that you want. And sometimes people have asked, they got a certain soloist and they want the choir background to do background music for them too. We need to know that as well. Because we'll come in, if the funeral is at 11 o'clock, we're going to come in at 10 to prepare so that we'll be able to do what it is we need to do for the family. So as soon as you know what it is that you want, please let us know so that we can prepare. And we'll do as best I can to satisfy and support you. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Just as long as you remember one thing, plan, prepare. Don't let it just happen. Thank you, Deborah.
Quick question before you run off. So I know from the clergy side, right? I only know about the clergy side that if I'm given an invitation to go and do a eulogy outside of the church or to go and do that, normally the family will present a love gift, right? If there are persons who are coming to do a eulogy at Metropolitan, and it's not the senior pastor, it's normally encouraged for them to do, upon the pastor's approval, right, to give them a love gift because they are coming and sacrificing their time and everything else to plan, prepare, write, and do a eulogy. Even if it's a member of the family. What say you about singing as well and being on part of the program? Is it customary for persons to offer a love gift? And can you say more about what that looks like in terms of respective range? And I know Gina's here as well.
Yeah, that probably should have been my primary thing to say to you. Many people think that you have to pay for people to participate on the program. It's not that you have to, but it's appropriate. You're asking people to use their time, talents, and substances to do the things that you want done at your program. I don't mind singing at programs. Again, church members. Now, if anybody asks me outside the church, I got to charge for you, and I'm sorry. It costs me. You know, if I've got to drive halfway over around the city, well, no, if I have to find you, because I'm challenged as far as maps are concerned. If it ain't on my GPS, I can't find you. So if I got to go and find you, yeah, I think it's absolutely appropriate for you to pay. But I tell you this, our members of this attitude, they offer. You know, many times the offer is enough. Many times the offer is enough. But in some cases, there needs to be some remuneration for the work that has to be done.
No, I just want to say, since you put me on the spot, how amazing I think this is, this conversation, how proud I am of this Farris ministry and my big sister. But I do want to say, as one, much like Harry, I probably got my fair share of programs as well in the car, or just any kind of program. But in this conversation, it feels like to me what's missing, or maybe what's being developed in this conversation, is maybe an extension of the Farris ministry, that is a point person that can collect all be someone who can primarily pull together all the things that will fit within the requirements that we're looking for the program. So the family doesn't have to call Daryl, or Ms. Lawson doesn't have to, and then that person who's the contact liaises with the pastor about what everybody's looking for, and make sure they get with Daryl about the music and the keys, and when to be in the sanctuary, where to sit, and what's like that piece to me is still what I haven't heard. And I think having this, that feels like something that needs to be considered.
And I think it has to be, my thinking on that one it needs to be the family. It needs to be somebody in the family who can corral everything and be responsible for it.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not my point. I'm talking about one.
Oh, no, here at the church.
Primary function at the church is to make sure that all the pieces that need to be identified for the program, as well as out shooting the information to ministry, video, text, the pastor, all those parts are coordinated. It's a coordination person.
And then before we move, I think what's supposed to be happening are the deacons are actually the ones who begin the contact. And it has been the case. Yeah.
Moving into futuristic church, that probably shouldn't be the case, to be honest. Like, there really should be a person who's had some training in hospitality and being sensitive to the needs of families during sensitive, critical times like grief. Maybe a little grief training, maybe even just protocols on how to do a program properly and all the things that would align with what this church's idea of what those programs should look like and what should be the components to make the program fit for what the church here wants to see. And I still think that that's could be a lay person's paid job. There are a lot of missed opportunities. I think somebody said something about the use of the church as an event space. Don't get me started. I pulled up on the lot today and thought it should be a skateboard park on Saturdays. Like, I don't know. Let me tell you, I've won about 12 more lines for y'all on revenue. I digress. Carry on.
Purpose is that it really takes planning.
I want to make sure that you touch on what I was asking in terms of as a musician, right? What would be, from your perspective, proper protocol? Because you travel a lot, you're able to minister to the churches. As you say, specifically for funerals, what is it if you're going into a space that's outside of your home church, right?
Well, I think the key thing about that question as it relates to the way I see things is that if this is a family service and family is asking family to do something, that means family by blood or by love, right? You can make a decision, as Harry said, the offer sometimes can be good enough, but to take for granted that it's not extended is probably along the lines of out of protocol.
Disrespect.
I think that there is, well, I don't even want to say disrespect, because some people just don't know. People do make a lot of assumptions that people will just be there to do whatever they want. Make that cake, make that food, and it costs to do all those things. And I do think that comes down to, especially if you're around town, we learn a lot of musicians in the city who are professionals. This is their livelihood. So to ask any of them to participate in a service and not be compensated for their work would be like asking me asking Dr. Branch here in front of me to do legal services for free, which he might because he's a friend of mine, but more than likely, he's got an hourly charge that, will come with that. So, yes, I think but these are things that someone who's in position can help families think through the process of what's proper and not take for granted or the assumption that they would know when they may just innocently, ignorantly not know.
You'll know our chairman and this young lady are relatives because they're spouting the same thing. That's what Deborah's actually, what you were talking about, it's what Deborah's actually going to do, and that's what her plan is. But I'm out of the way, Deborah, go.
Deborah, I have a comment. I think a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, I had to handle the services for my brother in the city of Missouri. And nobody told me to pay the pastor. He went to the cemetery, he did this. Nobody told me to do that. Nobody told me to pay a family member who sang at the service. It was so moving to me that I knew that I had to pay.
Right.
And it wasn't how much do you charge, but I went prepared with the money, and my sister said, hey, do we have the money together to pay the pastor? Do we have the money to pay? And I reflected back when I buried my mother, probably in 2001. Nobody had to tell me
Right.
And so I knew to pay them, and they didn't charge me. And I'm not talking about $100. And they were very, very appreciative that my family was thoughtful enough to recognize that they were taking the time to do all of that for my family. And and it wasn't a long service. We planned it for 1 hour and not above. And my brother was well known, head of a union, but we decided this would be what we have to do and not sort of take time from other people and make sure that we're compensating folks that are coming in doing this for the family.
Well, I think that one of the things here at Metropolitan, historically, we have not moved in that way. Historically, the church has always picked up everything. Historically, we have not had fish dinners. Historically, we didn't do chicken dinners. Historically, we did not do car washes on the parking lot. Tithes and offerings, kind of took care of everything for everything that we did around here. And so I think as we grow out what we're talking about today, there's going to have to be some mind shifts and some process changes or just adjustments. Some of these processes, as Dr. Moore mentioned earlier, are already in place and have been for decades. We just haven't always moved on them. And since Harry has already volunteered me, which I didn't know I was doing this, I'll be more than happy, Doc, to take on the poor person. I didn't know, but that's okay. That's okay.
It sounds like what you were doing anyway.
Well, I'm just a busybody around here anyway.
I think your sister walked you right on into that.
Did she?
I think that's exactly what she did.
Oh my goodness.
She just interjected that and said,
Have
since my
mercy.
sister's here.
Since my sister is.
But I think that would be a great relief to the pastor. And I think to a whole lot of other folk to have someone, but I think we need to be intentional about actually building that out.
Yeah.
And I think that we can make that happen.
Yeah.
We can make that happen. And I think the CARES ministry was created for such a time as this.
Yeah.
And we're at that place now where this is what we need to be doing. We've built up with a lot of these conversations over the last 2 years. Y'all, can you believe that? It's been 2 years we've been doing this. And so I think that we're where we need to be. And I'm going to actually take that one on without any pushback, Doc. I'm not gonna fight you on this one, okay? Okay, come on. Well, you know what? And I'm gonna say this, and we're gonna move on. The CARES ministry, the health ministry, and the Thrive ministry are the 3 ministries here at the church that need to collaborate to make this happen. And with that being said, I want to draw attention to Dr. Lucretia and Sister Carol back in the back, who are providing some other information. So they'll be in the back with that information on some senior services and things like that they have. Now, without further ado,
What's the Thrive Ministry?
what's the Thrive Ministry?
Can I? No. I know we have a guest here. I think if we. Are you sure?
You can answer.
Okay, because no. I'm gonna make myself available afterwards for all that, but I just didn't want to. The Thrive Ministry is a ministry here at the church where it's focused on helping people in crisis and moving them from surviving to thriving.
Okay.
And so the whole impetus of that, as we continue to develop it out, is to create access to resources so that if a person is going through a housing crisis, if a person is going through something that's happening in their lives, that there are resources here to be able to disseminate to a person that can help to guide them in the direction of where to attain certain support. So say if we have a loved one who, has been evicted, or a loved one who needs groceries or something like that, there are resources of being able to point people to where they can go, just even outside of what the church provides as it relates to support.
And so the church has been doing that anyway, so we have a title for the group now. That's
Right.
why.
So what the
It's
goal?
already been done.
Yeah, that's what we've been. So the church has an emergency fund, those kind of things like that, but we don't have a ministry that helps to tell people about all of the different resources that are available to them, and that's something we started a couple of years ago, and we're in the process of building out. So.
Thank you so much. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce everyone to Attorney Thomas Branch, who is with Archibald and Holman. Everybody knows Attorney Harriet Holman here at the church, and he is with that firm. And he's going to come and talk about legacy giving and how you all can leave y'all diamonds on the table for me.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning. Okay. I'm going to pass out something to you all.
I got you.
And
School teaching.
I'll be talking. My name is Thomas Branch. I see Miss Smith, one of my colleagues in the back there. How are you? Legacy giving. And I'm gonna talk first in personal terms, and I'm then going to move it to general terms.
Could you stay closer to
I
the
remember
mic?
you mentioning that before.
Yeah,
I
you
remember
can
you-
take the mic with you if you want to.
Nah, I need to stay still anyways. I've got a father that just turned 96 years old. He has a sister, an older sister that's 98, and he has another sister that's 101 years old. Okay. Now, of that generation, I am the youngest, and I'm north of 50 now. My father, he was a contractor, construction contractor, and during his lifetime, he accumulated a bunch of houses. Okay? And he actually, and let me say this, his father before him was a contractor too. So naturally, when he had 3 sons, in his mind, I've got 3 additional contractors to train. Well, life happens and none of us became contractors. But he still has all of these houses. And as I was, even before I went to law school, when I was, in college and things of that nature, he used to always say, this is going to be yours. This is going to be yours. And when I say this is going to be yours, he's talking to all 3 of us, all three of his children. This is going to be yours. This is going to be yours. Initially when he said that, well, yeah, that's a good idea. I wouldn't mind having a house. Transitioned into practicing law, and he used to say that. And not only did he used to say that, but I used to also recognize when I first started practicing law, I was doing some of the same things at 29 that I was doing at 17. That was helping him with these houses. All 3 of us were helping him with these houses. We would never say it, but in the back of our mind, we would say, I'm getting sick of this. I'm getting sick of these houses. That thought stayed with me. The thought stayed with him too was, I'm going to give these houses to my sons. Eventually, and God love him, he's my father, and I love him to death. He's 96 years old. He still drives. He still does whatever the heck he wants to. But we had to have a conversation with him, me and my brothers. And basically, we told him, we don't want these houses. There's nothing we can do with these houses. You did a good job raising us, and we're on solid footing right now. Your grandchildren, they don't need these houses. There are the people out there, or there are the institutions out there that would probably benefit more if you gave these houses to them as opposed to giving them to us. Because at the end of the day, I don't have time to take care of a house. My brothers don't have time to take care of a house. We're okay. We're okay. You did an excellent job in raising us. I'm going to tell another story. Remember I said I had a... It's nervous energy, I'm sorry. I have two aunts, one that's north of 100 and one that's closely approaching 100. And both of them did an excellent job raising my cousins. For some reason, I don't know how it ended up this way, but my father had all the boys and his sister had girls. The one that's north of 100 is currently here in Tennessee. She used to live in California. She came back here to Tennessee. And she accumulated, I don't know what it is with branches and houses, but she accumulated houses in California. My cousins are a little bit older than me. I call them a separate generation of me, but nonetheless, their mother did an excellent job in raising them. And guess what? They don't need these houses either. One of the things, particularly in this time period that we have seen, and I'm not going to mention any names and I'm not going to get into specifics, but one of the things that we know that we didn't know maybe 10 or 15 years ago is that institutions are important. I'm going to tell you why institutions are important. Institutions are where we mold children. Institutions are where we shape values. Institutions should be the backbone of this country. And I'm not just talking about courts, and I'm not just talking about administrative agencies, I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about institutions that we call our own. Churches. I know there have been studies after studies that talk about, and again, I'm talking in general terms, but because I can tell this institution is solid. But there have been a decline in institutions. And that decline has hurt us immensely. And when I'm talking about us, I'm talking about the African American community. Period. Ms. Smith can probably attest to this, but there are a lot of times when people come to my office, and I got to be wary of my time, but there are a lot of times when people come to my office about drafting a last will and testament, and that always dovetails to them about talking about family members, naturally their children. Some parents love their children unconditionally. I am smiling because when they tell me what little Johnny does or little Johnny did, and little Johnny's around my age, and they have this legacy that they want to pass on to little Johnny, I don't say it to them because it's their choice. But what goes on in the back of my mind when they're talking about little Johnny, and maybe little Johnny hadn't made the right decisions for themselves, or as far as how they're taking care of their parents, the question always looms in the back of my mind, do you really want to do that? Do you really want to do that? I call it legacy giving. Legacy giving, particularly for our churches, is important. And to be quite frank, when Pastor talked about the expenses of putting on a funeral, how many of you ever thought about that? Because I absolutely never gave that a clue at all. Never gave that one thought at all. And I don't think people who come to my office when they're talking about drafting a last will and testament give that one thought at all. A lot of times, and I've been trained to do this by the Hallmans, when someone comes to my office, I do talk about charitable givings, about the church and things of that nature, but I really don't get down to the nuts and bolts about it. What you said today put that in a different perspective. We always depend on our churches. We think our churches are always going to be there to usher us through terrible times. And we do it a lot of times without thinking of the expense that it costs the church. Legacy giving is something easy. It is easy. And when I say it is easy, how many of you have a last will and testament? Don't raise your hand, it doesn't matter. I don't even know why I asked that question. But you can always do it through your last will and testament. But even if you don't do it through your last will and testament, there are other mechanisms you can use to do legacy giving. It is not that hard, and Lord, we need it. We need it. Raise our children. You all know I'm not a member of Metropolitan. My mother, bless her soul, she was a big-time United Methodist woman. She died back in 2007. And there have been all of these, when I say big time, she dedicated her life to the United Methodist Church. I know more than I care to know about the history of the United Methodist Church because of her. I shouldn't say that, but you're right. But with that being said, when she passed away, what was there, and I'm sure the same thing is here at Metropolitan, what was there to usher us through her passing was the United Methodist Church. Was the United Methodist Church. Fast forward even 15 years after her passing, I still get these notifications from the United Methodist Church about, hey, we're going to start a scholarship and we want to put it in the name of your mother. We want to put it in the name of your mother. When my mom passed away, she did have a last will and testament, but more importantly, how she did it. Some of her accounts, some of her retirement, specifically named the United Methodist Church. And notice I'm not calling out a specific church, doesn't matter, but it named the United Methodist Church. I'm grateful that she did that. I am 100% grateful that she did that. I went to the University of Tennessee with Gina. And part of the reason I was able to go there was because I received a scholarship from where? The United Methodist Church. That wouldn't have been possible unless people left a legacy. You see on the paper that I passed out, we mentioned last will and testaments, we mentioned annuities, we mentioned insurance policies, we mentioned beneficiaries, and well, when I say beneficiaries, that has to do with specifically the church, the last will and testament, annuities, and insurance policies. You can be specific, and you should be specific when you're doing this. There's a note in the paper, in the document that I passed out, that there's more than one Metropolitan church. Surprise, surprise. Their churches named Metropolitan throughout the nation. So when you think about doing this, be specific.
Yes.
Be specific. And also when you think about doing this, how many of you, I heard I heard the gentleman from Farris Lewis mention that he had grown children and that he still supported them, this, that, and the other. And I get that. I get that. I was probably on my parents' coattails until I went to law school. But as we age and as we matriculate, and when I say we, I'm talking about the parent-child relationship, you know, the idea that I need to leave everything to my children, you might want to calibrate that a little bit. And the reason why you might want to calibrate that a little bit is there are going to be other institutions that should be in a position to help either your children or your grandchildren. I love my parents. I love everything they did for me. And Lord knows they did their best in raising me and, providing me with all of these opportunities. But that would not have happened had it not been for the church. The church cannot exist just by tithes and offerings. Not anymore. Not in this day and age. So think about that. Think about that. Initially, when the gentleman from R.S. Lewis was talking about pre-need funerals and things of that nature, and the importance of it, and not only the I was about to say the importance of it, but not only the importance of it, but how it saves money and things of that nature. When we talk about legacy giving, we're not just talking about providing an avenue for the church to do things, but we're also talking about your own mortality or immortality. And what I mean by that, and this is a little vain in me saying this, my history and my father's history will probably only survive through his grandchildren and my grandchildren. After that, what they know about me is probably going to extinguish. Being connected to a church, being connected to a charitable organization whereby you are setting aside an asset or whereby you are donating something after you go away goes a little bit beyond. I'm being facetious when I say goes a little bit beyond, because I think it goes way beyond your legacy and your family. Your legacy and your family is just one straight line down. When you're talking about charitable giving, you're talking about branching out, scattering your seed, so to speak. Yes, sir.
I was just going to speak to what you were just saying, and I guess an example of that. We have several endowments here at the church, and there are opportunities for members to establish endowments here. And one of those endowments, which a family donated and made sure, and Perlene is here, Trustee Washburn, do you want to speak to that? You're over our investments for our church. But I'm saying our endowments help to make sure our ministry can move forward. And I was even thinking recently about the AC unit that was needed in the kitchen, and we were able to take care of that expense because of a specific endowment that was left to the church. Did you just want to say a brief word?
The Negro Mayweather Fund was the first one that is dedicated to the kitchen. If there are situations that occur that we need funds to repair or the upgrades within the church, within the kitchen, we are able to access those funds. We also have the Bobby Jean Mathis Fund that was donated to the church. So we have those two endowment funds that have been presented to the church that we have an opportunity to rely on for different situations that occur within the church.
It's funny. Can y'all still hear me? It's funny that you mentioned the Bobby G. Mathis Fund, because I remember administering that estate and I remember that fund being established. But there are other things, and this is not new, this is not novel. My great-grandmother, now I can get back to my roots as a Baptist. My great-grandmother, she was a member of, Rock of Ages Baptist Church, and this was back in the 70s. I only knew her as my dear. I can remember, though, after her passing away, people talking about Othello Gordon, the Othello Gordon Fund, the Othello Gordon Scholarship. And when people said Othello Gordon, I was like, who is that? Now, mind you, she died when I was about 4 years old. And again, she was forever my dear to me. I had no idea what her first name was or anything like that. It was just my dear. Well, fast forward about 10 or 15 years after that, we had left the Baptist church but came back to a program honoring Othello Gordon. I never knew this much about my great-grandmother until I went back to that service. It's an attachment. It's an attachment. And despite what people tell you about, family telling you about this, that, and the other, legacies of ancestors, but to hear it from someone that you're not affiliated with, or they're not quote unquote family, that's something different. That is something impactful. So with that being said, I'm gonna get back to the skeleton and bones of charitable organizations. It doesn't necessarily have to be a church, but I encourage that it be a church. This can be done in your last will and testament. Throughout the question about who has a last will and testament, and I said, don't worry about that. Well, the reason why I say don't worry about that, as far as I'm concerned, everybody needs a last will and testament. Everybody needs a last will and testament. It doesn't matter how many have one right now, everybody needs to have one. You don't have to come to Archibald and Holman to get a last will and testament drawn up. You've got Ms. Smith here, you've got plenty of lawyers to do it. What I encourage you not to do is try to do it on your own. Do not do it on your own. I don't make, since we were talking about money and people's time, I don't make money when people go to an attorney, do a last will and testament, and they have all of their affairs in order. I shouldn't say I don't make money. I don't make that much money when people do it that way. If you're worried about legal expenses after you're gone, I don't know why you should, because you're gone. But if you're worried about legal expenses after you're gone, go see an attorney to do it. Go see an attorney to do it. Do not get on the internet. Do not sit down at your home and just start writing out things and hoping someone finds it. This goes back to what the brother from R.S. Lewis said also, as far as last will and testaments. Let somebody know that you did it. You typically have someone you trust, and that person that you trust 9 times out of 10, you're going to name them as your executor of your will. There's no need of having an executor of a will or a will at all, and they don't know you have one, or they don't know where it's located. There's a point in here about annuities and insurance policies, and the same can be said for bank accounts. You can designate whomever you want to, for the most part, as a beneficiary. I know you can designate whoever you want to on a bank account. And you don't have to put a single name on there, but just think about your church when you're naming a beneficiary on your bank account. annuities and insurance policies can sometimes be tricky, and the reason why sometimes they can be tricky is depending on whether or not this insurance policy is connected with your job. If it is connected with your job, they may require that you leave something to your spouse. And if it is connected with your job, depending on your job, not all the time. And this goes to something else, but you can't leave your spouse out of your estate. Okay. That's a conversation you have to have with me in your office, in my office. But you cannot leave your spouse out of your estate. But with that being said, if you have an insurance policy connected with your job, a lot of times it's governed by it's governed by a third party as far as who your beneficiaries are, but that doesn't mean you have to exclude your church. You can still put your church in there. The same thing goes for annuities. The same thing goes with any kind of financial vehicle that you may have. You could own stock. You could own any kind of investment. And 9 times out of 10, I know specifically with stock, a lot of times if you're working with a financial advisor with your stock, they will tell you at the time of purchase, they'll give you information, documents as far as who you want to designate as your beneficiary. Okay? Are there any questions? This is something simple, and it doesn't take a lot of instruction on it. It doesn't take a lot of instruction at all. If you have a checking account, consult your bank. If you're about to draft a will, or you now want to include something in your will that designates a charitable organization or your church as a beneficiary, seek an attorney. Seek an attorney. And again, it doesn't have to be me, but I'm always available. Yeah, absolutely. This is, and I'm going to repeat what you just said. When I'm talking, and I'm not, when I'm saying about, when I'm talking about leaving the church as a beneficiary, you can do it on a percentage basis. You don't have to totally exclude family members from your last will and testament, nor am I advocating that you do that. What I am saying is recognize who got you this far outside of family members.
That's powerful.
Recognize who got you this far outside of family members. And when I say recognize who got you this far, I'm talking about from childhood, coming all the way up, and this, that, and the other, because I know there are a lot of lifetime members at this church. A lot. And even if you aren't a lifetime member, say you've only been here for 10, 15 years, you've gained from being a member of this church. I've gained from being a member of my church. Recognize from whence you came. Recognize from whence you came. So no, I'm not advocating, don't leave anything to your children, exclude your children. It's not about that. The only thing I'm saying is remember these institutions. Remember these institutions. How much time? 2 minutes, okay. Any more questions?
I was just going to put this information out there. Even for as it relates to the pastor, right now, there's a key person insurance policy on the senior pastor of the church. So if something happens to me, that the church receives a benefit in the event of my passing, right? Our trustees were wise and shrewd enough to say, hey, it's important that we can take advantage of the fact that our pastor is young, right? So the prices are, competitive and low, and that it will be a blessing and benefit to our church in the long run. And I think even as we look at that, we're going to probably look at trying to maximize that out, because what it does is that it helps to empower the church for generations to come. And through insurance and endowments and all these other things, it empowers institutions like our church to be our own bank, so that we don't have to worry about always having to fundraise and ask and beg for the resources that we need. We have a great trustee that's over our investments, who's always trying to make sure that we can expand what we're doing. And even as it relates to endowments, those are things we can do now, living. We don't have to wait until we transition. That's it.
I'm gonna go back to houses, because everyone owns houses. And think of it from this perspective. If you have children that are already stationary in life, that have already nailed their path and know exactly what they're doing, think about that house, particularly if you have more than one child. And the reason why I say that is, I'm going to transition off, and I think Laurie Smith can speak to this. There's hardly nothing tougher than having multiple owners of one house. I mean, because it always boils down to, well, I'm the one that's always taking care of the taxes, I'm the one that's always doing yada, yada, yada. You can avoid that problem. Just give it to the church. Just give it to the church. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great job.
Oh my goodness. So much information has been shared here today. And I want to thank everyone for being on the panel, providing their expertise in their areas. I want to thank each and every one of you all for coming out. And I'd like to just extend an invitation. If there are some other topics that we need to talk about, hey, please hit me up. Let me know what we need to do next. If there's something that we have already done that we need to revisit, please let me know. And one of y'all, Doc, Harry, Deacon, somebody want to pray us out of here? Think we didn't, yeah, so let's, come on.
May we all bow our heads and thank God for this opportunity, praising God for everything that he does for us. Dear God, our Father who art in heaven, who looks down upon us and takes care of us in every way possible. Anything that we need, we gather from you, because it's in your will that we are replenished and given the things to go forward and do the work of the church. Lord, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for our church members. Thank you for the church. Thank you for the opportunities that you give us to be better people, to serve you better, and to serve our present age. I remember that so well from our former pastor, Owen. To serve the present age, our calling to fulfill. You allow us to do this in this very, very special way. You leave no stone unturned. People are not guessing about what's going on, because you prepare for us a place where we can be knowledgeable and informed of all the things that we need. Take care of all of us, oh Lord. Take care of our sick and shut in. Take care of the needs of those individuals who have one that we know not of, but you do. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray this prayer of dismissal. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Give it up.